She slammed her hand on the table so hard the cutlery jumped. You just tipped my rent to a stranger? The entire restaurant paused. Forks hovered mid-air. Conversation stilled. All eyes turned to us. I didn't flinch. I looked her dead in the eye. No, Amber, I tipped your ego, and it still wasn't worth the service. Her face flushed, first with disbelief, then with rage. Are you seriously trying to humiliate me? She hissed. After everything I've tolerated from you, I laughed under my breath. Tolerated? She leaned closer, her voice sharp and venom-laced. Yes, your budget meals, your cheap surprises, your dreams of opening a bookstore. What woman wants that? Do you think any girl would stay for that crap? Elijah, I said calmly, turning to the waiter. You ever get yelled at? For giving someone everything you have? He blinked. More times than I can count, sir. I nodded. Then you get it, Amber scoffed. Oh, how poetic. Quoting waiters now. What's next, Vernon? Working here side by side? That line got a few snickers from a nearby table. I didn't care. I looked at her like she was a stranger I no longer recognized. You know, I said, you once cried when I brought you flowers from a street vendor. You said you'd never felt so loved. Now you're embarrassed by table candles and soft jazz? People change, she snapped. No, I said quietly. People reveal. She stood up again, grabbed her phone, and took a picture of me standing. There, calm, hands in my pockets. You'll regret this, she muttered. One day, when you're alone, when you're still handing out books that no one reads. I don't hand them out, I interrupted. I sell them. To people with soul. You wouldn't know the type, she blinked. For a moment I saw her falter. Just a flicker. Then she turned on her heel and stormed out of the restaurant, heels clicking violently against the marble floor. The room was quiet again. Elijah stood frozen beside me. Don't worry, I said to him. She'll land on her feet. Then I added, more to myself than anyone else, but next time, she'll have to pay her own rent. When Amber first entered my life, I was working behind the counter at a small used bookstore that smelled like time and worn paperbacks. She was there with her friend Lauren, flipping through a shelf labeled classics with a kind of bored detachment. She wasn't the type who read much, not really, but she liked the idea of being seen holding a book. She asked me if we had The Great Gatsby, then laughed and said she only wanted it because the cover matched her outfit. I should have known. Then. But I smiled, found the cleanest copy we had, and handed it to her. She looked at me, really looked at me, and said, You've got that soft nerd charm going on. Dangerous for a girl like me. We exchanged numbers that same day. For the first few weeks, everything felt like a dream. Amber liked the way I talked, how I knew obscure facts about poetry and films from the 50s. She said it made me seem deep. And I liked the way she touched my arm when she laughed, the way her perfume stayed in the air long after she left. But as time passed, I noticed something. She didn't care about books. She didn't care about art or slow mornings or quiet conversations. She liked shiny things, fast cars, branded heels, champagne over coffee. Still, I tried. I introduced her to my world, took her to hole-in-the-wall cafes, walked her through weekend book fairs, even brought her to poetry nights where I sometimes read. She clapped politely, smiled when people looked, but never really listened. She started complaining that my life was too quiet, that I didn't want more. I did want more, just not the kind of more she meant. We lasted 1.5 years. And in that time, I gave her more than I'd given anyone else. Not just money, though I bought her birthday trips, paid for dinners, even helped her with rent a few times. I gave her patience. I gave her trust. I let her into parts of me that few people ever touched. But none of it was enough. Amber liked status. And to her, I wasn't status. She would compare me to Marshall, Lauren's boyfriend, who worked in finance and drove a shiny black car that cost more than the entire bookstore's annual rent. Amber would roll her eyes and say, You know, if you just took risks like him, you'd be making real money by now. I wasn't jealous. I just hated how she said it. Like everything I did was small. Sometimes I'd come home from a long day at the store, and she'd be scrolling on her phone, watching reels of girls getting proposed to with diamond rings the size of gumballs. She wouldn't say anything, but her silence always said enough. Didn't grow up with much. My dad was a mechanic. My mom worked in a diner. They taught me to earn every dollar honestly and never flaunt it. I learned early on that respect isn't something you buy. It's something you carry in how you treat people. Amber never understood that. She thought money made you powerful. But I'd seen men with full bank accounts and empty souls. Still, I held on. Not because I thought it would change, but because I wanted to believe that love could outgrow difference. That somehow we could meet in the middle. Until that night. The night she ended it over soup and dim lighting. The night she mocked my bookstore dreams. The night she handed me her rent money like it was a token of her independence. That was the moment I realized Amber hadn't just stopped loving me. She never really had. She loved the idea of what I could be. She tolerated who I was. That's not love. I remember walking out of the restaurant, envelope still warm in my pocket, and feeling something I hadn't in a long time. Clarity. Not sadness. Not heartbreak. Just a cold, clean kind of truth. Amber wasn't the villain. She was a mirror. She showed me exactly what I needed to see, and in doing so, she set me free. The first crack wasn't loud. It didn't shatter anything. It just echoed in my chest when Lauren mentioned, almost offhandedly, that Marshall had seen Amber out with someone new the week before our anniversary. We were in the bookstore, Lauren flipping through a photography book while Marshall waited outside in his sunglasses, looking as bored as ever. I paused. What do you mean? Someone new? Lauren didn't even look up. Relax, Vernon, I'm just saying. Maybe don't hold on so tightly if she's already testing the waters. Testing the waters. Like relationships were pools and people just dipped in and out. I laughed it off then, but I didn't sleep that night. Amber came over the next morning like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, ate the breakfast I made, and talked about how tired she was from helping Lauren shop all weekend. I watched her carefully, every blink, every gesture, wondering if the lie would slip through. But she was good. Too good. So I tried to ignore it, tried to keep being the boyfriend she could come home to. But the distance started to stretch. She stopped answering calls as quickly, claimed she was tired during dates, left my texts on read. One evening, after I closed the bookstore late, I passed by a cocktail bar on 9th where we used to go during our early days. I wasn't looking for her. I just liked the place. But through the foggy glass, I saw her. She was at a high table, leaning in close to a man with slicked hair and a tailored blazer. Her laugh was a sound I hadn't heard in weeks. A genuine one. She touched his hand like it was second nature. I didn't walk in. I didn't confront her. I just stood there and watched, wondering when she had stopped laughing like that around me. When she got home that night, she was smiling, still glowing from whatever made her laugh. I was with Lauren, she said, not even blinking. We had sushi. Sushi. At a place that didn't serve it. I nodded. Said nothing. It was the next morning when I finally asked, "Are you happy, Amber?" She blinked, caught off guard. What kind of question is that? A real one. She paused. You're fine, Vernon, but fine isn't enough, not for me. It stung more than I expected. Not because she didn't love me, but because she was tired of pretending she did. She looked at me like I was the shell of someone she had once admired, and then she said it. There's someone else I've been talking to. Not cheating, not sleeping around, just talking to. But it was the same thing. I nodded. I figured. She didn't expect that. She blinked like the villain in her head was supposed to be me for not getting mad. You're not going to ask who? No. Why not? Because I don't need the name of the person you use to escape your reflection. She scoffed. Always, the poet. Always the honest one. We didn't argue. That was the strange part. We didn't yell. She just got up, took her purse, and said she needed time to think. I said, "Take all the time you want." She left, and for the next few days, she didn't come back. Then came the dinner. The planned anniversary reservation I made a month in, Advance. She showed up late, wearing the same dress she wore the night I first kissed her. I almost thought she came to make things right, but instead, she broke up with me between the appetizers and the wine. That's when she said it. I've met someone who makes me feel expensive. And then she laughed like I was a memory she had already boxed up. So I tipped the waiter with the envelope she handed me. Rent money, pride money, blood money, call it whatever you want. But that moment, the stunned look on her face, the silence in the restaurant, the slow unraveling of everything she thought she controlled. That was when the conflict really began, because she thought she could leave me without consequence. But I wasn't angry. I was done. And I was ready to show her what it looked like when a man lets go, with class. Vernon didn't go home after the dinner. He drove past his apartment, past the bookstore, past all the places that used to mean something, and kept going until the city lights blurred behind his windshield. He didn't know what he was looking for. Maybe air, maybe silence, maybe just a place where her voice wouldn't echo. He parked on a quiet overlook near the river. The water below shimmered in the dark like broken glass. He sat in the car with the engine off and the window cracked, feeling the night breathe against his face. He wanted to feel angry, wanted to punch the steering wheel, scream into the air, curse her name until it lost meaning. But all he felt was still, hollow. Amber was gone. But she hadn't left suddenly. She'd been leaving for months, in small ways, in silent ways. The kind that don't make noise but leave marks. He remembered the way she used to hug him, both arms tight, her face buried in his shoulder like it was the safest place in the world. He hadn't felt that kind of hug in almost a year. He thought about the night she stayed over, when she would fall asleep before him, her phone clutched in her hand, always tilted away from his line of sight. At the time, he convinced himself it was nothing, that everyone valued their privacy. That love didn't require total access. But now, those nights played back like scenes from a movie he didn't want to watch. He remembered the text messages she'd send, less frequent, more curt. The way her laughter had stopped reaching her, eyes when he told her jokes. The way she started dressing up more, even on the days they had no plans. He thought he was overthinking it then. But now, in the quiet of the car, every red flag felt like a billboard. Vernon ran a hand through his hair and leaned back. "You're pathetic," Amber had said, right before walking out. He whispered it now, as if testing it on himself. Pathetic. No. That. Wasn't it? What was pathetic was how hard he tried to hold on. What was pathetic was sacrificing pieces of himself just to keep her happy. What was pathetic was pretending not to see the end when it had already arrived. His phone buzzed. A message. For a moment, his heart jumped. But it wasn't Amber. It was Lauren. "Just so you know, she's already moved in with Marshall. She told him you were clingy and cheap. Thought you should hear it from someone else." Vernon stared at the screen. For a long time. Cheap. The word hit harder than he expected. Not because of the insult, but because she used it to describe someone who gave her everything. He didn't reply. He turned the phone off. He leaned his head back and stared at the car's ceiling. His chest felt tight, not from heartbreak, but from the weight of realization. She didn't love him. She never had. She loved what he gave her, the attention, the gifts, the comfort. He was a stepping stone, a phase, something to pass through on her way to something shinier. But then, why did it still hurt like this? He thought about their first winter together, when she bought them matching scarves. About the time she baked him a cake for his birthday and nearly set the oven on fire. About the look on her face when he once told her he loved her, like it was the first time someone had ever said it and meant it. Was none of that real? Was she lying the whole time, or had she just changed? He didn't know which answer was worse. He closed his eyes and tried to breathe. The truth was, he wasn't sad about losing her. He was sad about losing the version of himself who believed in her. The version of himself who thought love was enough. Who believed that sincerity could outweigh flesh That loyalty could beat wealth. The version of himself who thought he was building a future with someone, when she was only building an escape route. The silence wrapped around him like a blanket. And then, something inside him shifted. Not anger. Clarity. She didn't just break his heart. She woke him up, and that was more valuable than any apology she could ever offer. Vernon looked at the city lights in the distance and finally started the engine. He wasn't running anymore. He was driving toward something. Vernon returned to the bookstore 2 days later, thinking he'd find peace in the quiet rhythm of sorting paperbacks and stacking returns. But the peace didn't come. Not when the mail arrived. There was a plain envelope addressed to him with no return name. The handwriting was rushed but oddly familiar. Inside was a receipt, a hotel receipt. Amber's name was at the top. The date was 3 days before their anniversary dinner. Room 714, 2 guests, 2 nights. He stared at the paper, unmoving. Not because he didn't expect it, but because of what was stapled behind it, a handwritten note, just 1 line. She said she'd never love a man who still hands out flyers. But it turns out she still needed your credit card. Vernon's heart dropped. He flipped the receipt over. His name was listed as the cardholder. He checked his account online immediately. The charge was there. Processed through a linked account he had given her access to when she was behind on bills last winter. He'd forgotten to remove her name, so not only had she lied, cheated, and moved in with someone else, she had used his money to do it, used his kindness as fuel to celebrate her betrayal, used his savings to share a bed with someone else. It wasn't just emotional anymore. It was theft. He closed the laptop and stared at the walls of his bookstore. The stories around him felt hollow now. Fiction had rules, real life didn't. That night, he didn't go home. He drove to the hotel. Room 714 at the front desk. He didn't ask to speak to Amber. Instead, he calmly asked for a receipt reprint. Gave them his card, gave them his name. And when the receptionist said, "Of course, sir, you're the account holder," he smiled, not because he was glad, but because he had proof. Proof of how low she was willing to go. Proof that she didn't just break his heart, she spat on it. He left the hotel with the receipt in hand and drove straight to Marshall's address. He had never been there before, but Lauren once mentioned it. A condo on the 17th floor. Fancy, sterile, spotless. Vernon walked through the glass doors like he belonged. Told the doorman he was there to return Amber's belongings. The man nodded, recognizing the name. When he knocked on the condo door, Marshall answered shirtless, hair damp, a drink in hand. Amber was behind him, wrapped in a silk robe. She froze when she saw Vernon. "What the hell are you doing here?" she asked, voice sharp. Vernon didn't say a word. He held up the hotel receipt and dropped it on the floor between them. Marshall looked down, then looked at Amber. "You told me your ex was crazy. You said he was stalking you. You said he hit you." Vernon didn't flinch. Amber's face turned pale. "I never touched her," Vernon said calmly. "But she touched my money. So if you're going to share your bed with her, maybe you should also share the bill." Amber stepped forward, angry now. "Are you seriously trying to destroy me?" "You did that yourself," Vernon replied. Marshall picked up the receipt and scanned it. His mouth tightened. "Amber, tell me this is fake." She hesitated, and in that pause, everything unraveled. Marshall stepped back. "Get out!" Amber's voice cracked. "Wait, Marshall, he's manipulating this. You don't understand." "I said get out." Amber looked at Vernon, eyes wild. "You did this on purpose." "I did nothing but show the truth," Vernon said. He turned around and walked back down the hallway, hearing her scream behind him. But he didn't smile. He didn't feel triumphant. He just felt done. Vernon thought the confrontation at the condo was the final blow. That after everything, the receipt, the public humiliation, the truth exposed between Amber and Marshall, that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. The storm had one more wave. He got a call from an unknown number the next morning. At first, he didn't answer. He wasn't in the mood for drama or apologies, But the number kept calling, 3 times in a row. On the 4th, he picked up. "Vernon, it's Lauren." Her voice was tight, urgent. "What do you want?" "I don't like you," she said immediately. "Let's be clear about that. But I'm telling you this because it's about to get bad. Amber's making noise." "What kind of noise?" "She's gone to HR at Marshall's firm, claimed you've been harassing her. She's saying you showed up at her door screaming threats, that you've been stalking her, sending messages. She's trying to cover herself before anyone can connect. The money she stole." Vernon felt a strange calm settle in his chest. "She's accusing me?" "She's trying to flip the narrative before Marshall tells his side. She's scared he's going to report her for theft. She did steal from me. I know. And he knows. But Vernon, she's dangerous when cornered. I'm not scared of her." Lauren's voice softened slightly. "I don't think she's finished yet. She posted a long message on her social media this morning. Made you sound unhinged. I think she's trying to make you look unstable, so she can protect herself if this goes legal." Vernon was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Thank you for telling me." "I didn't do it for you," she said. "I did it because I know Marshall. He's not going to cover for her. And when she crashes, it's going to be ugly. I don't want to be anywhere near it." The call ended. Vernon sat in his apartment, still and expressionless. Then he opened his laptop and pulled up Amber's social page. There it was. A long post filled with selective truths and exaggerated pain. She painted him as obsessive, unstable, emotionally abusive, claimed she escaped a toxic relationship, and was brave enough to speak out for the first time. The comments poured in. Support, sympathy, praise. He scrolled and scrolled until he saw one line that hit harder than the rest. "He once told me no one would love me if I didn't change, so I changed. I left, and I've never looked back." That was the moment. The moment it shifted inside him. He had been patient, kind, quiet. He had taken every blow with silence, let her bury herself with her own lies. But now, she was rewriting the story, his story, and he couldn't let that stand. He didn't post anything in return. He didn't fight her in the comments. That wasn't his style. Instead, he went to the bank, requested statements. All the transfers, every rent payment, every gift, all time-stamped and signed. He pulled the hotel charge. The authorization trail showing it came from Amber's login. Then he drafted a simple legal notice. Theft, misuse of funds, defamation. He wasn't bluffing. And then, without ceremony, he sent it to her email. She replied within 10 minutes. "Vernon, please, can we talk? This has gotten out of hand." He stared at the screen. "You made it public. You fix it." I was emotional. "I didn't mean it like that. You lied, Amber. You used me. Then you humiliated me. Now you're playing the victim." I panicked. I just didn't want to look like the bad guy. "Then maybe you shouldn't have been one." She didn't reply again after that. Not until 2 nights later. Vernon was closing the bookstore when the bell above the door jingled one last time. He turned, expecting a customer who'd lost track of time, but it was Amber. She looked pale, eyes sunken, makeup streaked. No heels this time, just flats and a crumpled hoodie, no perfume, no mask. She didn't speak at first, just walked up to the counter and placed her hands on it like the weight of the world had finally found her shoulders. "I lost everything," she whispered. Vernon didn't answer. Just waited. Marshall's firm terminated him. They didn't care what I said. He told them everything. And now, he's gone. He packed his bags and left this morning, blocked my number, moved out of the condo. Vernon nodded once. "That's what happens when you play games with people's lives." "My parents saw everything online," she continued, her voice shaking. "The receipts, the comments. They said I embarrassed the family. My father canceled my tuition. I'm not going back to school next semester. Actions, consequences." "I'm not here for sympathy," she muttered. I need to understand something." Vernon raised an eyebrow. "Why didn't you fight me online?" she asked. "You had proof. You could have destroyed me, Everyone was listening. I didn't need to fight you, he said simply. You fought yourself. She blinked, tears forming in her eyes. I made mistakes, Vernon. He looked at her carefully. You made 100 decisions. Don't reduce them to mistakes. You lied. You used me. You spent my money to sleep with another man, then accused me of abuse when I showed up with proof. I didn't think you'd go through with suing me. I didn't think you'd be so cruel. The bookstore was quiet now. Even the city outside seemed to pause. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small box, pushed it across the counter. What's this? Your watch, the one you gave me last Christmas. I had it cleaned. Vernon didn't touch it. Keep it, sell it, pawn it. I don't care. Amber's lips quivered. I don't want to end like this. You ended it at dinner, Vernon said calmly. You just didn't realize it then. She covered her mouth and let out a sound, half sob, half gasp. I ruined everything. No, you revealed it. She turned and walked to the door. But before she left, she turned one last time. Do you still think I'm the girl from that bookstore? The one who smiled when you handed her Gatsby? Vernon thought for a moment, then smiled. No. That girl was kind. You were just wearing her face. She nodded, almost like she agreed, then left without another word. And Vernon, he finally felt something loosen inside his chest. Not anger, not pain, just peace. Weeks passed. The storm Amber tried to stir had faded into background noise. Vernon returned to his rhythm, opening the bookstore in the morning, sipping quiet coffee before customers arrived, spending evenings cataloging books, reading, breathing. But silence didn't mean he forgot. The lawsuit progressed quickly. Amber tried to stall, begged through emails at first, then through calls she made from new numbers, using unfamiliar names to trick him into answering. He didn't block her. He didn't reply either. He let her spin in the silence. She tried to paint him as vindictive. But Vernon didn't retaliate with noise. He retaliated with facts. Screenshots, statements, witnesses. Even Lauren submitted a signed statement confirming the money Amber used wasn't hers. When the day came, Vernon didn't hire an aggressive lawyer or walk in with a dramatic entrance. He showed up calm, dressed cleanly. He let the truth speak. Amber sat across from him in the courtroom, nervous, cheeks flushed under a layer of foundation. She avoided his eyes the entire time. When the judge ruled in Vernon's favor, Amber didn't cry. She just deflated. She was ordered to repay the hotel charges plus damages for defamation. The total wasn't life-ruining, but it was enough to sting. Enough to follow her name on every official record moving forward. And that wasn't the end. A few days later, Vernon made a quiet donation to a local scholarship fund at a public college, under Lisa's name. She didn't know until she received the letter informing her she had been selected for a fully funded teacher training program in another city. She messaged him a simple, "Did you do this?" He replied, "You once said poor kids deserve dignity. Now you get to teach them." "Thank you," she wrote, "for everything." "Thank you," he replied, "for never asking me to become someone else." That was all. He didn't push her for more, didn't try to turn gratitude into romance. And Lisa, being who she was, didn't let it become complicated. She left quietly, respectfully, just like she always lived, with purpose. But fate has a way of circling back. 2 months later, Vernon was approached by a real estate agent representing a private client. They wanted to buy the property next to his bookstore. Not just buy it. They wanted him to consider merging both spaces into a larger venue, a bookstore cafe. The deal was solid, clean, respectful. It wasn't until the third meeting that Vernon learned who the silent investor was. Marshall, the same man Amber left him for. The man who lost his job, moved out, and apparently spent the months after reevaluating everything. He walked into Vernon's store one evening, no suit this time. Just jeans, a plain black jacket, and eyes that looked like someone who had finally seen the bottom of the world. "I came to say thank you," Marshall said. "Not just for not pressing criminal charges, but for what you taught me. Vernon raised an eyebrow. You didn't have to ruin us, Marshall said. You could have crushed us. But you let the truth do the work. And it did. Loudly. Vernon said nothing. I want to invest, not to make up for what happened, but because I believe in what you've built. After a pause, Vernon spoke. Amber ruined you too? No, Marshall said. She revealed me to myself. Turns out I was shallow enough to fall for a pretty face and blind enough to ignore everything. Underneath it. Vernon studied him. This partnership, it's not pity. No, it's respect. The deal moved forward. The second property was acquired, renovated, and expanded. By summer, Vernon and Verse Cafe plus Bookshop opened its doors. It was warm, quiet, filled with sunlight and jazz, with shelves that wrapped around soft armchairs and little handwritten recommendation cards from Vernon himself. People came. Some just for the coffee, others for the poetry nights. A few came for the curiosity. Isn't this the guy whose ex dragged him online? But they stayed because the place felt like truth. Amber didn't return. Not physically. But Vernon heard about her. She moved back in with her parents. Tried to start fresh in a different city. But the internet never forgets. The screenshots floated in quiet corners of the web. Reminders of the girl who tried to twist her story and ended up unraveling. Her own life. One day, a letter arrived in Vernon's mail. No return address. Inside, a simple note. You didn't hit me back. You didn't destroy me. But somehow, you won. I hate you for that. And maybe, deep down, I respect you for it. There was no signature, but he knew who it was from. He folded the letter once, then dropped it into the trash. Not out of bitterness, but because closure had already arrived. He didn't need her regret. He didn't need her apology. He had something better. Peace, purpose, and dignity. One evening, as he was locking up, he saw a group of students gathered outside the window, reading the handwritten sign posted on the glass. This bookstore was built from heartbreak and rebuilt with clarity. Come inside. There's a story waiting for you. Vernon smiled, stepped outside, and held the door open. Because that's what people like him do. They keep the door open, even after it's been slammed on them. They move forward, not with revenge, but with something stronger. Redemption.